And I'm an alien with jazz rap style. Jazz rapping for an alien mile. Fat beats and an alien smile. Jazz space phone, alien dial. Funky fresh, hello. Fat beats to the ace to the place. Fat beats to the galaxy, man. Fat beats to the man with the plan. Check it out. Jazz rapping to the alien mile. I got fat jazz rap style and miles. I got alien jazz.
Okay, I'm reloaded. What is up, y'all? It is your host, Fermi, here, once again back at you with an episode of the Music Producer's Treasure Box. Like I said, I am reloaded, baby. Last week, sincere apologies for not producing an episode. We've actually had this current interview recorded for quite some time, but I did not have the intro recorded. Shame on me. And I caught a sick flu. Case of the flu, man. It brought me down, took the wind out of my sails there. Had all these appointments to do, had to cancel a bunch, made a couple, and then just basically got back to my bed as soon as possible. We are back this week, hoping to drop you this episode plus a bonus episode to really shine the light that y'all need in the music community out there. I've been so encouraged to get feedback from y'all on the shows. We had some awesome episodes recently. Go back if you have not heard the Low Lash episode, the Dogma Beats episode, and we've got a ton more that have come out prior to that. Today's episode, I really want to give a shout out, encourage everybody to subscribe to our playlist. FermiMusic.com/playlist is where you can find a link to the Spotify playlist that I've put together that features some of my favorite tracks from artists that have appeared on this show. Not only some of the dope tracks that you get clips of are featured there, but also just some of my personal favorites from these artists that I have on constant rotation. So check them out. FermiMusic.com/playlist so you can check out the music of these folks. All right, without further ado, today's episode is something that I've been waiting to share with y'all for a long time. The composer, the musician of Adult Swim's Rick and Morty was able to sit down with me and chat a little bit about his story, his journey to doing some awesome music for an awesome show. Now I have to tell you, Ryan Elder, this guy is an amazing gentleman who comes from the Midwest, from Minnesota, I believe, and is now part-time Minnesota, part-time Los Angeles, producing a world-class soundtrack for a world-class animation. A little bit about Ryan before we jump in. Not only does he do television and film, and not only is he known for the comedy and sci-fi scores that set the background for Rick and Morty, but he's also doing some music for HarmonQuest and DreamWorks animated series Boss Baby Back in Business. One thing that I was really impressed by was the way that he told his story and how he found value in things that I think a lot of people overlook when they are just starting out and they may not quite see. So pay close attention when he starts talking to y'all about the very first large studio that he gets to work in. All right, I don't want to spoil any of the secrets, and I'm too excited to talk any further. Let's get into this interview with Ryan Elder right now. Let's go. All right. Well, I'm super excited. I've got my man, Ryan Elder, coming to us to the Music Producer's Treasure Box. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Super excited to get your email back the other day. And like I was joking on email, it took me like 24 hours to respond to you because I just started binge watching Rick and Morty out of excitement. It was cool to get your response. And I'm glad I actually answered you after getting kind of absorbed in the show.
Yeah, I'm glad you could pull yourself away too. No, this is fun. I dig your podcast. I dig this sort of approach you're taking. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks a lot, man. Definitely interested to have you on the show. Not only am I a big fan of the actual animation and all that, but I'm super interested in just shining a light onto different career paths in music. A lot of the audience that I have, listeners, they produce beats. They might have them on BeatStar. They might release stuff on Spotify. Some of them are gigging, but there's a whole wealth of different ways to leverage your passion in music and build a career out of this. So I was kind of hoping that you could just come onto the show and share some of your insights and share your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. My journey to becoming a TV composer is actually a little different than the sort of traditional path. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to talk about this with you for sure.
How did you actually get started in music? Is this something that you've done from a young age, or what was like the seed of all this?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go all the way back to the origin story, right? When I was 5, I started learning how to play violin. So I've played violin my whole life, sometimes more intensely than others. But when I was a kid, my dad actually had like a home recording studio. He had an IBM 8086 computer.
Wow.
And like a Alesis HR16 drum machine and a Yamaha DX100, which is like the little mini version of the DX7. A lot of the same sounds. And so he would like sort of taught me how to produce on a computer when I was like 7 years old in the 80s.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I've been sort of recording and producing using computers and stuff since I was a little kid. But then I also took violin and have always been involved with music. When it got to the point of like graduating college with my music composition degree, I was lucky enough to have an unpaid internship at a studio that did music for commercials.
Okay.
At the time, they were called Ad Music. Now they're called Emoto Music. And they do primarily music for commercials, although we did a few TV shows while I was there too. And I came on as an unpaid intern, and they must have saw something because they eventually brought me on as like a dub room assistant. I was driving tapes all over LA when I first got started and doing that sort of runner business. And then little by little, I just started like, hey, can I demo on this ad? And I started doing that. And the ad agency started liking what I was doing, and I started selling ads, and it all kind of like snowballed from there. And at the same time, I was like building out contacts outside of the advertising world with making new friends that were making like funny short internet videos. Two of those people were Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon, the co-creators of Rick and Morty.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're just networking away. You were down in LA. How did you get out to LA? I think originally you were from the Midwest somewhere.
Yep. Originally from Minnesota. I came out to LA to do this internship at Ad Music / Emoto Music because I had a family connection that hooked me up with an unpaid internship.
That was the hookup.
Yeah, they don't take anyone, just anyone. They want people who are interested and are going to do a good job. So, yeah, it was definitely nepotism that got me in the door. But a lot of interns got in the door and didn't make a career out of it. So there was something else going on there. Yeah, that's how I came out to LA the first time, was just, hey, you want to do this internship?
I love that. And that actually touches on, it's a little bit different, but it touches on something that I hear a lot of, and that is you're adding value, and that's when you're actually going to start receiving things, right? So I think a lot of people might even turn down an unpaid internship, whether it's for music or really anything. If you're listening and you're just interested in any field and you're getting an opportunity to work in that industry with a company that's well known and established, you're going to be able to network. You're going to be able to add value, whether you're getting paid right off the bat or not. I mean, you took this unpaid internship, I should say, and really flew with it. And obviously, look where it got you.
Yeah, I mean, so it was unpaid monetarily, right? But I was paid like tenfold in opportunities. It's a world-class recording studio that I had access to 24/7, basically. So I had the option of like, when they weren't using it, going into Studio B and demoing for ads.
Wow.
And I was like, so I'm like, really was trying to take advantage of the opportunity. Even though I wasn't paid in money, I was paid well, very well in opportunity. And at the time, I also was like realistic about the value of what I was bringing to the table.
Yeah.
I know that like what I bring to the table as a 21-year-old fresh out of college is like energy and passion and desire. I don't necessarily bring talent to the table yet, right? That's something that I'm there to work on. So if I can go there and I can give them energy and passion and all the things that a 21-year-old fresh out of college brings to the table, in exchange for all this great access to the studio and all these opportunities to connect with people that are making music professionally, that's well worth it for me, and it's well worth it for them.
That's great, man. And I would love to just kind of linger in this for a second and really get your thoughts. How did it come to be that you got this relationship with Dan Harmon? And obviously that has become just a really valuable relationship and friendship that you've built. But I'm sure you had no clue what it would lead to when it first started.
Yeah, it's funny because Dan started this short film festival in LA called Channel 101. It's like a monthly film festival that's sort of TV focused. And there's no money, nobody gets paid, people spend a lot of money on their shows, but basically it's they screen 10 5-minute or less pilots, they call them. And the audience votes for their favorites. And the top 5 get to make the next episode in the series. The rest are quote unquote canceled. So it's like a mini TV network that's very democratic. And I found out about it because my wife was on the internet just looking for fun stuff to do in LA and was like, hey, this is happening in LA. Why don't we go to this? We're new to the city. Why don't we go to this? And I went, and it was like so mind-blowing because it was so funny, and it was clearly this like really tight-knit community. And after that first time, I was like, I got to be a part of this. And so I threw together a reel of some stuff I'd been working on ads, and I posted on, they had a forum back then. Now, I don't know how they would communicate, I guess Facebook, but so I posted on the forum, I said, hey, here's what I work on. If anybody needs music, let me know. And I got a couple people who were like, yeah, let's do some music for one of our little shows. And just sort of worked my way into the community by just offering up what I had to offer, which was my skills as a composer, and understanding that it was completely unpaid, and I was never going to be a diva about it, because they weren't getting paid. They're just doing it for the love. And so was I. So in my off hours, I'm just having fun making these short little videos with people and becoming friends with them. Yeah. And then Justin Roiland, the co-creator of Rick and Morty with Dan Harmon, he was also making shows for that.
Okay.
And some of my favorite stuff at the time was Justin's. Like, I remember just leaving the screenings going like, holy shit, that guy is a fucking genius. Can I swear? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And just like really wanting to work with him, and opportunities popped up where I got to work with him, and we started developing a relationship both outside of the business, becoming friends. We're both into gaming and stuff. And then also like professional relationship, to where when he was getting the opportunity to pitch for Fox and other networks like Nickelodeon, I was always like the first person he called to help punch up his pitch with some music. And then when Rick and Morty, when they ordered a pilot for that, it was like, yeah, I've already worked with these guys. We have a good relationship. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was doing a little research on you prior to the interview, and I think, you had even worked on the main theme song for Rick and Morty with Justin or Dan, or maybe both, on something else that you were pitching to a different channel, and that song was just so good, but maybe the animation didn't pan out or something?
Yeah, so the show was a pitch for a different show to a different network that was like more of a kid's show. And the network passed on it. I couldn't tell you why. I think it's great. Yeah. You can actually watch on Justin's website. I think you can watch the parts of it. Maybe you'll even hear the Rick and Morty music on it. Wow. And when they passed on that, I retain the rights to that music because they didn't want it. So when we were working on Rick and Morty, it was just like, hey, we need some music for the main title just for now. And I was like, hey, we all love this. Why don't we just throw it in, and it'll hold the place of whatever's going to go there eventually. And it just we could never find a reason to get rid of it at that point. So that's why, that's what it is.
Right. I mean, I guess you never know how something will get received by others. So whatever, that show didn't work out. But the fact of the matter is you produced that song for it, and then you had that in your repertoire, right? So you're able to pull that out. And obviously, it's a legendary track now.
Yeah. It's crazy. Working on ads, like that's one of the first lessons you learn, is that you get rejected constantly, right? Because when you're working on ads, you're competing with like 10 other tracks at least.
Right.
Sometimes I've heard of spots where they solicited 75 demos from 75 different composers.
Wow.
and then they pick one, right?
Yeah.
And so 74 people are just like left with this track they wrote that might be amazing. It just wasn't quite amazing enough. And a lot of these music houses, they monetize these tracks that didn't sell.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I learned very early, like keep everything, even if it's just a sketch that you hate, because you never know when you need to use it later, or when it could just be the seed for something else later. And, the Rick and Morty soundtrack is a great example of that.
Exactly. Yeah, I think with ads, it's interesting too, right? Because they have to do a lot of tests. They have to, put it in front of focus groups or,
Yep.
Just match things up and try different things out. I know even on things like Facebook ads, folks who run those will run like 10, 20 different versions and, ones that everyone loved in terms of the creative side and the design team will end up failing terribly when it actually hits the public. So,
Yeah.
unfortunate truth, I guess, of ads and really of anything, some of them just don't resonate.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always surprising when an ad that I worked on or one that I even demoed for and didn't get would really hit or not hit. Like somewhere I thought, oh, this is going to be a massive hit. I remember there was like a whole Wendy's campaign we did where they had this new tagline that I thought was just absolutely genius.
Yeah.
And it lasted for like 1/4 of a year, and then they stopped using it. And I was like, what? That's so good, though.
Yeah. You're like, what happened? It was the one.
Yeah.
Totally, man. Well, when it comes to the Rick and Morty soundtrack, I thought it was hilarious as well online where you were talking about actually getting to expand the songs into full length tracks when I think a vinyl was getting pressed and the whole soundtrack was finally going to get released, because a lot of the tracks were like 20 seconds, or maybe 30 seconds. And fans had been asking you like, when or where can I find these tracks? Cause I want to like propose to someone, to one of them and all that kind of stuff. Right. And it's like, dude, it's like just, you're going to have to loop it.
Exactly.
That was pretty funny, man. And I guess the fans got what they wanted, right? So eventually you were asked to actually expand these tracks.
Yeah.
How was that whole process? Was that challenging?
It was fun actually, because a lot of the tracks I hadn't revisited the session for, in some cases, like 5 years even. Some of the stuff I wrote for season 1, I did in 2013, I think. So like even loading up the session is like, oh, this is from an older version of Pro Tools. I'm using synths that I haven't touched in, 5 years. So it was kind of fun to pull them up and see like, what were the sounds where was my head at back then? And sort of, and then apply all this new stuff that I'm interested in and using on top of that. So I actually really enjoyed that process. And hopefully I keep writing 30-second cues that people go, oh, I want a full song of that. And I'll get to do it again.
Yeah, it sounds like a good goal. Well, with that, I actually wanted to roll into one track that you felt really passionate about, and that was the Goodbye Moon Men song.
Yeah.
Why do you feel so passionate about this one? Why do you like this?
Well, first of all, I got to work with Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords on this. He's the vocalist on it. He was also a character in the episode. And the script said the character's name is Fart. The script said Fart sings a David Bowie inspired song, and then it just had the lyrics for the song.
That's all you get.
And so, yeah, that's what I got. And this needed to be a pre-score, so I had to write this before I had any timings of animation or anything. And I knew Jermaine was going to sing it, so I knew he had an incredible range, so I could really do whatever I wanted, and I knew that it needed to sound like David Bowie. It was just really fun to sort of do a deep dive on some old David Bowie and really get that in my head, and then try to come up with something that was an homage to him without, of course, being illegal.
Yeah.
And also, like, to be a song that you would maybe want to listen to outside of the context of a comedy TV show.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think, like, it's one of those songs that it's a rare experience in my life where I sit down to write something and it really just comes out like almost fully formed. Like I don't have to work that hard at it, and I cherish those moments because they're pretty rare. And this is one of them. And so I think that's why for me, it's like, it stands out as one of the most fun things I've done for the show. It's just because it was like it just kind of came out.
Nice. Well, let's roll into a little clip of it right now. Let's check it out. Let's go.
But we make sure they see the sun. Goodbye, moon man. You say goodbye, moon man. Goodbye, moon man. Goodbye, moon man. Oh, goodbye.
All right. Well, we listened to a little bit of that song, and that is a fun one right there. I love how you just said it came to you. I love that you got to have a lot of fun researching with it. It's actually one thing that I love about doing a podcast about music is it lets me get deeper and deeper with my understanding of what artists like yourself and many others do out there. And I usually start going through your entire catalog, entire discography, figuring out everything that you've done in your entire life. And it just is a lot of fun, adds a lot of depth to what I do as a musician myself.
Yeah, well, don't go too deep. There's a lot of crap in there.
All right. I won't tell them about the 2004 stuff. That's on IMDb.
All right.
When it comes to music and music production, I was going to ask you, does it always come to you very easily at this point? It sounds like you're really well trained, classically trained. You went to school for engineering, composing, and recording. At this point, when you get in the studio, do you just already hear exactly what you're going to put down, or is it an experimentation each time? What is your process, and what does that look like for an artist like yourself?
Well, yeah. So because I'm writing to television and because I'm trying to help someone tell a story, I have there's a limited range of what the correct thing to do would be, right? There's a lot of ways to do it incorrectly. So in that sense, it's usually somewhat easy, although there's at least one or two cues per episode where I'm like, man, what's the story here? What am I trying to get across here? What's the emotion?
Yeah.
Whose point of view does the music need to come from? And a lot of these questions, I'll talk to Justin and Dan and sort of pick their brain about where to go with it. But a lot of times I also just have to answer that myself. And sometimes it's a swing and a miss, Sometimes I got to go back to the drawing board. But it's definitely not easy, right? It's like any job. If it was easy, I wouldn't want to do it anymore. It'd be boring.
Yeah.
So I embrace the fact that it's a challenge every time I sit down. Some cues are easier than others. If it's a short cue at the beginning of a scene and it's just there to set the tone, I'll probably bang it out in 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Then there are other cues that take me all day, easy. So it just depends. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it's always easy at all.
Right. So as an example, I don't know if you'd remember this, but let's take one of my favorite tracks that you have done, and that's Get Swifty. Okay. This one is hilarious to me. What kind of cue do they give you for something like that? Just semi-degrading rap in, what do they say, dude? That's going to save the world, by the way.
Yeah, those lyrics are improvised. That's Justin just in a studio, just coming up with shit on his own.
Yeah.
He's an incredible, improvisational lyricist and singer and rapper. Well, not so good at rapping. He on his old podcast, he had a character that rapped. Oh my God, I'm going to get so much hell from fans for not remembering the name of this character. But he rapped, right? And basically he would start off saying one thing, and then in the next sentence, it would rhyme, but it would just be nonsense words, right? So he would just take the easy way out every line. But it was funny, right? He's just super funny guy.
Yeah.
So Get Swifty is just him just rapping over a beat. And actually the beat that's on the show itself isn't even my beat. That's from a stock music library.
Oh, okay.
Because that track was created for a Flash game that Adult Swim made. And it was supposed to be an Easter egg in the game. And the writers of the show loved that Easter egg so much. They're let's make a whole episode around this song. But That being said, I did a remix version of it for the soundtrack.
Okay.
It's the easiest one to get now.
Yeah.
And my version is just I just tried to do a beat that seemed it would fit with those lyrics, but also be somewhat serious, but not too serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you really saying that the actual episode that features Get Swifty was made because they liked the beat of a song and wanted to build an episode around it?
They liked the Get Swifty song that Justin improvised for this game, right? So for the game, you found Summer had an iPod in her room, and you could listen to the songs on the iPod. Yeah. And so they made these fake songs for the iPod, and that's all they were supposed to be, was just an Easter egg in the game.
Wow.
So Justin just went in the studio one day, they pulled up some stock music, he just rapped over it. Then they produced it out, right? Doubles and all that stuff to make it sound like a real song with crazy ass lyrics. And so those songs on her iPod, the writers heard those later and were like, oh my God, these are so funny. Let's make a whole episode around them.
That's hilarious. And then it turned into Talking Heads, and you had to save the world with this.
Yeah,
wow.
I think, I love their instincts there, right? Their instincts are like, look how crazy dumb these songs are. Like, they're so funny and dumb. Let's make the stakes extremely high for why these songs exist, right? Like,
Absolutely.
there's nothing funnier than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching the show like this is the song and they actually like it. Oh my goodness. Earth is lucky.
I know, that's my favorite part. That's my favorite part when they're just inexplicably love this song.
Yeah. It makes no sense. But I guess that's true for everybody's taste. You just never know, man.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
So when you're in the studio, tell some of my listeners, like, what are some of your go-to tools? It sounds like your DAW is Pro Tools. And what are some of your go-to tools, though, otherwise, like in terms of hardware, software, or maybe VST plugins?
Sure, yeah. I'm not a huge hardware guy. I have a couple of synths. I have a Korg Prologue. I have a Moog Rogue, which is a pretty cool from the 80s. It was like a consumer version of the Moogs that they put out, and they sold them at Radio Shack. And I have a Micro Korg and some other, like, you know, I have like guitars and basses and stuff. But most of what I do, especially for Rick and Morty, is in the box. It's all using software samplers and contact libraries. I use a ton of contact libraries.
Yeah.
Like all the orchestral stuff is all done using contact libraries. Symphobia is a big one that I use. Like, it's really kind of the heart and soul of the score for Rick and Morty is through Symphobia.
Right.
And I use a ton of libraries from Output. They make stuff like Signal and Rev, and Exhale is a really good one for like vocal samples. If I need to do something that's like current and kind of EDM-y or poppy, I love going to Exhale for like that cool. I don't know how long it's going to be cool, but like that vocal sample, kind of triggered vocal sample sound that's might be on its way out. I don't know.
Yeah, like pitched.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like mixing and mastering, I have the Waves Platinum bundle that I use. Like I use a lot of their stuff for mixing and mastering. And yeah, Pro Tools. But most of what I use is in Contact.
Interesting. Cool. So it sounds like you get to really rely a lot on the software. You don't need to go big, hard into a lot of hardware stuff. And even in mastering, it's all there in Pro Tools using different mixing, mastering limiters that you have just there software-wise.
Yep, exactly. You know, I could outboard a lot of stuff, but it just takes too much time.
Yeah.
You know, I have to write. For Rick and Morty, there's not that much music per episode. It's maybe 12 to 15, 17 minutes per episode. But I work on two other shows as a co-composer. And one of those has like, out of 22 minutes of video, it's like 20 minutes of music per episode, every episode.
Wow.
So you got to work fast, you know, and a lot of the software allows you to work fast and deliver really, really high quality stuff right away.
Absolutely. So you do work on some other shows, right? I think you work on the Boss Baby, like TV show that's on streaming. I think it's on Netflix. And you also work on another show with Harmon called HarmonQuest, you were telling me in our pre-interview. Tell us about those. And out of curiosity, which one of those is the one with the 20 minutes of music?
Yeah, so the Boss Baby Back in Business is the show I do. I do it with my co-composer, Ben Bromfield. And that show is 20 minutes of music per episode. It's a kids show, and it's like pretty chock full of scoring, really heavy scoring, because it's a kids show. Yeah. So but the vibe is kind of like the creative brief when we got it, when we were pitching to get the job, was the 30 Rock soundtrack. So like jazzy meets Jay-Z. They wanted kind of like a 90s hip hop vibe.
Yep. Classic.
And one of the reasons why I have a co-composer is because I can do the Jay-Z thing in my sleep, but I can't do the 30 Rock thing. Yeah. And so I hooked up with a guy who can nail that jazz thing, and he taught me how to do the jazz, and I taught him how to do the hip hop, and together we like can do the show together.
That's awesome. Hey, about that, did you actually land the gig for Boss Baby, kind of realize what kind of sound palette you're going to use, or did you and Ben get that together? How did that work? How does that collaboration start?
Yeah. So when they sent the brief, we got it through our manager. Ben and I have the same manager, and they sent the brief out to a lot of managers and composers. And it just was like, here's the characters, here's the sort of tone and vibe of the show we want to go for, and send us a playlist of stuff you've done that sort of fits this, right? And then they take that playlist, and Ben pulled some jazzy stuff, I pulled some hip hop stuff, and then we also kind of did some mashups, right? Where I took some of his jazzy stuff and added hip hop to it to plus up the reel. And we sent that, and that's kind of like the first narrowing down, right? Like they listen to that and they go, okay, who's got cool stuff and who's got like what we're hearing in our heads.
Right.
And after that, they sent us 3 scenes from the first 2 episodes, I think. And so we had to sort of demo on these scenes from the show. How would you treat the score from the show? They just said, like, knowing what you know about the creative brief, how would you apply that to these scenes? And a couple of the scenes were like not hip hop, right? It's like one scene, Boss Baby is constipated and he can't walk and he's like falling. So it's comedy, right? So that one was like, I really relied on Ben to sort of nail the jazzy kind of scoring vibe of that scene.
Awesome.
But another scene was like Boss Baby, like confidently walking into his job, right? And that one I was like, oh, we could do like a Crazy in Love kind of a vibe with big horns and big like pumping kick drum and stuff, like just like a badass walking into his job, you know? And so like that one was more hip hop. And we demoed these scenes, we sent them to them, and they got back to us. We went in for an interview. We did the interview. They must have liked us because they gave us the job. And then like literally was like, as soon as they told us we were on the job, it was like, okay, in 2 weeks, you got to have the first episode delivered. It was like, all right, let's do this.
Nice. A little bit of pressure there with that deadline. No worries.
Yeah. You know, you can do, Ben and I can do, Ben can actually do like 3, sometimes he's been known to do 5 minutes of music in a day. He's insane. I don't know how he does it. It's really impressive to me. But 2 to 3 minutes of music, if you know the palette, is not out of the realm of possibility within a day.
Right. And it's, I mean, that's a great story right there of just collaboration, I think, right? A lot of people try to lone wolf it. Some people who didn't really realize the value of collaboration might have said, you know what, I can do hip hop with some kind of jazzy elements. I think I can do this whole thing on my own. And then you would have been real stressed out real fast, or possibly not even landing the gig. So true highlight of what that collaboration element should be all about.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of collaborating. You know, the other show I work on, I also collaborate on. It's HarmonQuest. It's on VRV, which is a streaming network. And actually, the 3rd season comes out in a couple of days, maybe even the day we're recording this. I'm not sure, but probably by the time this podcast is out, it's probably out. And I think you can even watch the first 2 seasons without a subscription right now. And the show is super, super funny. If you like Rick and Morty and you like Dungeons and Dragons at all, you probably like HarmonQuest. It's improvised Dungeons and Dragons game that they then animate the sort of action parts of.
That's so interesting.
It's quite funny. Usually they have an improv comedy guest every episode. But they always have an improv comedy guest every episode who like plays a new character that's introduced just for one episode. And it's quite funny. And the score is like kind of Lord of the Rings fantasy, obviously related scoring. And so I co-composed that with my buddy Jason Martin Castillo. And one of the things is I started off doing that show by myself and realized like about midway through season 1 that it would be more fun to do it with someone else.
Absolutely.
And so I started working with Jason, and of this season we became co-composers on it. And so, you know, he's amazing and we kind of work on this together. But this one isn't like a melding of 2 styles. It's just a way to like for both of us to kind of like do part of the show, you know?
Right. Share the workload.
Exactly. So
as you're speaking, I'm kind of confused here. I'm actually a bit blown away. It sounds like you're having so much fun scoring for TV. It sounds like a little bit of a different world though than what I get exposed to in music production for just songs. I don't really know what you want to call it. Beat making, all the, you know, types of styles that I featured here on the show as well. The way that you talk about music is a little bit different. I'm not sure if you've ever really produced songs like full on out just to release as Ryan Elder or in a band or something. But do you kind of see that there are a lot of differences between artists that release for recorded music versus the scoring industry? And what do you think some of the biggest differences are for people who might be interested in learning about the scoring side of things?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's some parts of overlapping, right? Like if you're making beats to sell, like you have a client, right? You have someone who you're trying to make happy, which is what I do. Like I have a client. I have to deliver a product to someone else based on what they are expecting, which isn't always the case when you're like making a record for your own name. Like if I were to put out a record under my own name, it was not related to anything else that I do. Honestly, that would be terrifying for me because I would sit down at my desk ready to try and write some music for that. And I would just be like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm just going to play computer games instead because it'd be too much. So I need the structure of like, okay, I have to like paint inside these boxes, right? Mm-hmm. So I totally get it's very different. And the whole business side of it is very different too. Like I think the competition is insane, right? For songwriting and beat making, especially. Like you mentioned the website earlier. I always forget the name of it.
BeatStar, probably.
BeatStar, yeah. Like aren't there like several million beats on that site? Like how do you even figure out what's good and what's bad? Like
yeah.
And then I think it probably just becomes marketing, right? Like yeah, so that's marketing is a whole another area that like I don't really have to do because I have clients specifically wanting certain things from me.
That's interesting. I mean, you probably do have to market to a certain degree, right? Like you had to build a name for yourself. You had to network and make some connections. But I guess going back to your time, really getting to know the folks over there in the animation studios and all that, you planted those seeds really early on. And now you've been able to just foster great relationships. And it's kind of led to the next season or the next gig or a different show.
Yeah.
While you built up your resume. So I don't know, like, I guess now you really don't think about the marketing, but maybe you did sort of inadvertently before?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think the difference is that I'm more marketing myself and the promise of what music I can deliver as opposed to a specific piece of music. Like I'm not out there trying to sell a track or a collection of tracks. I'm out there trying to sell my skills, really. So in that sense, it's different. But it's like any music for hire, writing music for hire, whether you do trailer music or ads or whatever. Like they want to trust that you're going to deliver what they want, something that they love that's new or interesting or fresh or whatever in some way. And part of that is just selling yourself as a person, right? Like one of my things that I pride myself on is being extremely easy to work with. Like I never throw fits. I'm always like deliver on time. I always do as many revisions as they want until they're happy. Like those are things that I pride myself on. And so in a way, I'm marketing that, right? And that's a little different than like how I'm assuming someone would have to market themselves as a beat writer.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hilarious part for me because I'm not used to getting a cue. As interesting as that would be for a show, and they tell me that it needs to be like a David Bowie inspired song about rat poison or whatever kind of situations you end up in. I can only imagine with the writers what kind of funny cues you get. But you're saying the opposite basically of what I'm sure a lot of my listeners are also feeling. You're like, if I sat down with no real direction, no motive, and I just had to start, I wouldn't quite know what to do. You literally said I would be frightened.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. I hate a blank page, you know? I hate starting from scratch with nothing. You know, when I did ads, sometimes during downtime, when there wasn't any jobs coming in the door, we would write what we call dead demos, right? Like demos that were like from the get-go, they weren't live. They weren't sold yet. Maybe someday they're for the library, right? And I always hated that. Because like, what am I going to do today? You know, the world is my oyster. I could literally write any style of music I wanted. What am I going to do? Right. So I'd always like kind of default to the stuff that I found easiest, which was like either hip hop or kind of EDM based stuff at the time. And I, you know, that's not necessarily a recipe for writing good music if you go in terrified and also sort of like trying to make it easy.
Well, even though you said you rely on kind of a hip hop EDM sound, you're really a jack of all trades, man. You've got to pull all kinds of different sounds out of the hat for your different productions that you do, for the animations. And we talked earlier about a song that somebody actually wanted to propose to their girlfriend to, called Unity Says Goodbye. And you were able to lengthen it out. It's a really like soft and romantic song. And I wanted to just play a little clip of that. It's
sort of sad too. Like the scene that it takes place in is the character of Unity, which is Rick's girlfriend, basically is breaking up with him via a letter. And he's reading the letter out loud. And so it's like kind of a sad song, but apparently it resonated as a song that someone might propose to their girlfriend to. So I hope this person doesn't mind me mentioning this. But
and I hope they don't also mind me saying sadness, romance. Sometimes it's the same thing. So let's get into a clip of the song right now. All right, all right, all right. So whether you thought that song was sad or you thought that song was romantic, I don't know. It's a little bit of both. But that one is, like I said, totally different than hip hop. I've heard you a few times now say that's sort of your go-to is like a hip hop EDM. So I would imagine rhythmic drum type sound. But truthfully, you do get stretched like every direction through your different projects that you do. How do you make sure that you know this stuff? I mean, how have you picked up these different styles?
Part of it is just I listen to a lot of it. And I guess, I'd be selling myself short if I didn't say that there's something inside of me that allows me to listen to music and go, oh, I know how to do that just by listening. And I've had that since I was a kid. I remember when I first heard the Madonna song, Justify My Love, when I first heard that song on the radio, I was like, oh, I think I know how to do that beat on my dad's drum machine. And I went home and like recomposed that beat on my dad's drum machine. And this was I was 12 years old or something. So I have always kind of like been able to listen to music and break it down and figure out how to rebuild it. So it's just like the next step to doing that with my own sort of ideas, right?
Yeah, totally. And for some reason, Madonna keeps coming up on my show for music producers for electronic music.
Oh, that's funny.
It's like Madonna and the RZA are two of the most influential artists of all time, according to this show.
It's funny. Madonna has always worked with like the hot producers, right? I don't know how she does it, but she always pulls out the producers that are like the hottest right now and puts out records with them. So in a way, yeah, totally. I could see it. She's always kind of been right at the forefront of making the stuff that's like new, and she's not afraid to sort of let that producer do their thing, but with her voice.
Yeah. Well, if my listeners haven't gone and press pause, stopped the podcast already and gone and started binging Rick and Morty, I'm hoping they're still here. What tips would you have for them? Let's say they're just listening. They're like, you know what? I've put 5 million beats on BeatStar. I've got a lot more ambition. I would actually like to do TV, film, that kind of stuff. How would someone actually even start in that? What would be your recommendations here in 2019?
Yeah. So the first thing you got to do is you got to move to New York or LA or London. There are people who work on media, TV, and especially YouTube now has allowed people from not those three cities to do a lot of work. I guess, probably also somewhere in India, there's probably a lot of work as well. But I'm going to stick mainly to the three cities that I would personally go to. And you kind of got to be where it's being made. Yeah. I hate to say it. It's not advice a lot of people want to hear, but it's really important. That's the first step. The second step is you have to be in some way someone that people want to hang out with. And this is nothing to do with your skill, right? Like as a musician, as a music writer, like you need a good social game. I can throw a rock down Sunset Boulevard and hit 10 composers that are super skilled. But if you're not someone that like is fun to hang out with, you're not going to work. It's just, I hate to say it, but it's true. So whatever it takes to be someone who's fun to hang out with, I read a book about 12 years ago. It's literally a 100-year-old book. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It sounds skeezy, but it has a lot of great tips on just how to be a social person, how to connect with people on a personal level and be real and honest about it.
Right. It's a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people have probably heard of it, but it's great. I wish I had read it when I was like 12. I feel like I'd be 10 times more successful already, but
exactly.
In any case. And then the last thing is put yourself in situations where people who are making what you want to make are making that thing and want to hang out with you. So like go to film festivals, go to things like Channel 101, go to directors panels and go to levels that you might feel are like beneath you in some way, because like everybody has to start somewhere. Don't overvalue yourself necessarily in the beginning. Just value what you can experience.
Absolutely.
Put yourself in those experiences.
I feel like a lot of the things you just said there were like social based, right? Like you're saying, like go out. You need to be in New York, LA, or London. That's the ideal spot. You need to be where it's being made. You need to be someone that other people want to talk to and hang out with. You need to be a cool guy or girl. Like you have to have that personality and that social piece.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And you need to even go to some place that you might not naturally go as a hardcore musician, which is to some film festivals, directors panels, and so forth.
Correct. Yep. I hate to say it because talent is important. The last thing I would say is write music every day. Every day. Don't stop. Even when you're not feeling it, write something bad. Just purposefully write something bad then. but write music every day because you'll learn from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to get those reps in. You know, I know if there's
Absolutely.
days where I cannot produce music and I come back, whether it's one day or sometimes I go on a vacation. That's the worst. I don't even like going on vacations because of stuff like this. I get so out of sync with like everything, you know, like it's just like I'm rusty, man. You can feel it.
Yep. I mean, it's still hard for me to come back from vacation. That first day back, it's like, oh, geez, how do I even start, you know?
Yeah, it's not even
But
like you
you got-
dislike
you have
it.
to.
You're just rusty.
Yep. I had a composition teacher in college once tell me you can't wait for inspiration. And that's really been my mantra as a media composer. Like, I'm not here to be inspired and write something amazing necessarily, although it's great if it is amazing. I'm really here to deliver a product on time and in tune.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so it's a different world than maybe a lot of your other guests, but maybe hopefully it's interesting. I don't know.
No, I think that's valid. I mean, that quote right there is actually similar to something that I live by and one of my mentors told me. And that's actually the inspiration is for amateurs. And,
I love that.
Yeah. If you are really waiting for inspiration to come about, you have a problem because it might not come for a while, you know? So really inspiration comes from putting on your producer's hat, whether that's literal or figurative, and just getting to work, and inspiration will find you. And through getting those reps, again, you just got to do it.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. Can I steal that?
Yeah, for sure.
I like it because it's like a little bit meaner than mine. No offense.
Yeah,
But
no, it's more
it's got
direct.
some
I was gonna
edge,
say
man.
that.
It's got some edge.
Yeah,
I like it.
inspiration is for amateurs.
Yeah, it's great.
You know, your surgeon, if you hopefully don't have surgery, but if you do, they're not waiting to get inspired to do the job and to do a good job, right? You better hope they're not. They're just professionals. They put on the scrubs
Absolutely.
and they're ready to go. They know what to do, man. And I feel like musicians should approach it that way more often, right? Like, this is just what I do and I'm going to do a good job. Realistically, it is music, so sometimes it's not quite what you thought. But, you know, if you're waiting for inspiration, you could be waiting forever.
Yeah. You know what I will say, though, is people love stories of inspiration afterwards, right? It's a great way to sell your music after you've already written it. And Hans Zimmer, the film composer, is super good at this, right? Every time he does a Christopher Nolan movie like Inception, Dunkirk, he has like a story behind what was the inspiration for his music.
Yeah.
And as another composer, I know, okay, there was a lot of inspiration going into this, but he has like a cool story. So for like Inception, it was like Christopher Nolan gave me this old French song and I slowed it way down and I built the whole soundtrack around that. Yeah. And then for Dunkirk, it was just Christopher Nolan gave me this old pocket watch and I used the tick from that as an inspiration for the soundtrack. And those are great stories, right? And people love to hear them. And Hans Zimmer is really effective at telling the story of his inspiration. But at the end of the day, he's just going in and grinding like everyone else.
Absolutely.
So it's good to have a story of inspiration to sell your track afterwards. But you cannot wait for that inspiration at all. You just have to start.
Totally.
Find the inspiration after.
Totally. I think also people think that artists are creative and they got inspired, but they're just used to doing those reps, you know, like artists that are well known in a visual realm, like Picasso. They weren't just inspired every once in a while and did a painting. This guy did 50,000 paintings or something like that. So of course he has some successful, famous works and he got really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing too that you didn't really mention there, but I'm curious, do you need a portfolio of songs, or, you know what I'm saying, something like that to do this? Or is it really to you the most important part, that social piece?
No, you definitely have to have examples of your work. No, even if people love you, if they can't at least imagine you doing the job, they're not going to hire you.
Yeah.
So you definitely don't sleep on talent. You got to have something, right? So you have to have, usually what we usually submit is, like I said, for Boss Baby, we submitted basically a playlist of music that was in the right genres, right? Mm-hmm. But ideally, to show off to a new client that you've never worked with before and isn't looking for necessarily something specific, is scenes or stuff that you've scored, even if it's just for demo purposes, to show that you can do it. Because scoring to visuals is totally different than just writing music.
Got it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for those insights. If any of my listeners out there are interested in this, take this man up, put together some demos, score things to visual. I would say even if it's not your visuals, right? You're literally
definitely
anything.
Yeah, you can find there's composer groups on Facebook and on YouTube and stuff where they take scenes from movies that had no music for whatever reason, and then you can use those to score. There's a famous scene from Batman Begins, I think. It's a chase scene that has no music. And a lot of people will score that scene because it's an action sequence and it definitely could have had music.
Interesting.
And so that's like a good example. And there's all sorts of scenes like that aspiring composers trade back and forth, like, oh, this is a scene with no music, or that one. You can find it. It's out there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for being here today. It's been a lot of fun. We talked about a lot of different things. But before you go, what should my listeners know that we haven't covered about you? And also, what should we be looking out for on season 4 of Rick and Morty?
What do they need to know about me that they don't already know? I feel like it would be arrogant to say anything, but I'll go with something. I'll go with something weird. I once played on the Magic the Gathering professional tour.
Oh,
how about that? I'm a nerd.
That is extreme right there.
In terms of Rick and Morty season 4, it's awesome. I've already gotten started on it. Comes out in November. The episodes are incredible. Hasn't missed a step. I think people are going to really love it. I'm excited.
Awesome. And where can they reach out and maybe learn more about you?
Hit me up on Twitter. I like interacting on Twitter. It's at Ryan Elder Music.
All right. At Ryan Elder Music on Twitter. It's been awesome to have you on the show, man. I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. Hey, what did you guys think about that episode, huh? Was that fun or what? Not only did we hear some hilarious stories from Ryan Elder himself on what it is like to work with the folks at Adult Swim and the folks who have created an insane animation, Rick and Morty. If you're not familiar with the show, go check it out. Like I said when I was introducing Ryan, man, I wasn't 100% familiar with the show. I'd seen clips here and there, but when I started digging in to the show, I got addicted real quick. And I'll tell you what, I was binge watching before I knew it. The show is a little bit graphic, so if you have young ones, you might not want to watch it. It is not that kind of cartoon. However, as a sci-fi fan myself, my name, Fermi, is rooted in some sci-fi traditions. It was cracking me up. And I love the whole alternate dimensions and the different adventures that Rick and Morty get into, as well as their whole family on a regular basis. Now, did you hear what Ryan said earlier on in the episode? Did you hear how he got value out of something that a lot of people might overlook? Now, I work with a lot of young people on the day-to-day, whether it's in music or on some of my other ventures. But I'll tell you what, oftentimes people just overlook completely the long game. And Ryan clearly saw the long game when he got an opportunity to work in the advertising firm at a young age out there in Los Angeles. He was able to work in a world-class studio, and it might have been a free internship, but like he said, this was one of the most advanced studios that you could honestly ask for. And he got free reign to use that and to do what he would like in that studio when there weren't any sessions booked and when he wasn't needed for other things. So I really want you to reframe your brain. And if I took something away from Ryan, there was so much to take away. But if I took one thing away, if I had to choose, it would probably be that tidbit of information right there. I want to remind myself that on a day-to-day basis, and I want to remind y'all. What are you actually getting out of your experience? You know, it's not all about that bottom line, bottom dollar. What value can you extract, whether it's a learning experience or whether it is financial, whether it's even a spiritual or an emotional experience? I'm telling you, what you're going through right now, there is probably some gold to mine out of that experience. You just have to open up your third eye. Some might call me crazy. Some might call me hopeful. But isn't this also a type of investing? Now, when you actually think about things in the long game, you have to understand the experiences that you're having, the opportunities that you're giving may not be paying off right now, but down the line, those will monetize. Those will add so much value. Those will be defining moments. Without further ado, once again, please go to fermimusic.com/playlist, subscribe to the Spotify playlist, and we're going to constantly be updating that with music. I just updated with some of Ryan's songs yesterday. So check it out, subscribe to that, and be sure to check out our show on a weekly basis. Subscribe to that as well on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify Music, on Stitcher, or wherever you get your shows. Let's head out with one more hilarious, innovative track from my man Ryan Elder. This guy's range is unbelievable. Let's go.
Yo, you gotta be aware of all the flu up in the air. I'ma get me a shot, make the flu go away. Flu-hating rapper, just rapping away. Yo, flu-hating rapper. It's a flu-hating rap. Hey, flu hating rap. First you step to the left, then you step to the right, and your chin is clapped. If you don't have the flu, then don't bother listening. The flu snot is glistening all around us. I'm a flu hating rapper. Go to the crapper when the poop comes out like liquid, that means you got the flu. So then, what do? You go to the doctor, you get a shot. Actually, it's too late at that point. This is about flu awareness. Gotta be